What's up YouTube, TCG Radish here, back with another Mystic Stadium video. Today I've got a deck profile for my personal build of the Shadow Dragon deck. I have transitioned to the Game Crafter for card production, but I don't currently have all the cards to build this deck, so here are my old cards. I must say I'm going to miss these cards because I do like the smaller size, and the foil I think is pretty cool, but Game Crafter definitely has a lot better printing quality than me, and you gotta give to get, so yeah. Well, let's get right into the deck profile. First off, we run 2 copies of Shadow Dragon. This is the main big boy of the deck. It's a cost 3 12/12, which is pretty overstated, and it's also immune to any flash card or spell card with cost 2 or less that your opponent plays. In addition, it has the ability to completely decimate your opponent's field if it can attack over their total shield. But it does come with a pretty big drawback, which is your discard zone has to have 7 or more monster cards in it for you to play this card at all. And that's play, not just summon. I feel like there are 2 really effective ways to use this card. The first would be in a control deck, where it's a finisher, and you draw out the game to a point where you meet that 7 monster minimum in your discard zone. The other way is to use cards to fill up your discard zone as quickly as possible. And that's what we have for this deck. Next up, we've got 2 copies of Scythe the Punisher. Now this card serves a lot of purposes in this deck. It's a cost 2 9/3 monster with flash shield that it destroys itself at the end of the turn. You're also able to play this card from your discard zone by destroying 2 of your monsters during your main phase. Not only can this card help you fill up your discard zone, it also has 9 power, which is pretty good, and it can attack over a lot of very problematic monsters. Overall, STP is a pretty versatile card, and it's one of the main ways we're going to put cards into the discard in order to enable Shadow Dragon. Moving on, we got 2 copies of Reconnaissance Fairy. Pretty nice, efficient card that lets you draw, and hand knowledge can be valuable too. Next up, we got 3 copies of Return Spirit. Now this card works super well with STP and can generate a lot of value. Specifically, when an STP dies, it's during your end phase, so you're able to return all your Return Spirits in your discard zone to your stadium. So it's a card that can be used for fodder over and over, and that can generate a lot of value. Plus, it's pretty cheap to play at only 1 cost. Next up, we got 2 copies of Crystal Shade. This is a pretty valuable monster. 5 power is pretty hefty, and it gives you a refund on its energy when it dies. Next up, we're going to play 2 Mystic Shepherds and 3 Sheep. Mystic Shepherd is really only useful the first time you play it, since after you pull the sheep out of your deck, there won't really be any more sheep to search for. However, it does give you 4 monsters with only 2 cards, however, which is the most monsters you can get for the least number of cards. It's also got 5 total shield, which is significant. Next, we run 1 Apparition Mirror. This is pretty good removal in this format, since most big monsters have at least as much power as they have shield. And since this monster has the ability to copy the greatest power of your opponent's monsters, it can just attack and destroy that monster. Next, I run 1 copy of Grave Eater, because this does seem like the type of deck that Grave Eater would be good in. Grave Eater has received an errata. It is now 1/2 as opposed to 1/1, and that's reflective in its Game Crafter printing. And I did that so that it doesn't die to Apparition Mirror, because I can't have every card die to that. And onto the spell cards. And first we've got 3 Quick Energy, of course. And one thing to note about playing this card in this deck is you do want to be careful about Quick Energy throwing your sheep into your energy zone. Generally, you don't want that to happen. At least you don't want them to go too deep into there, so you gotta plan around that. For our second spell, we run 3 copies of Deck Shovel. And this is the other main way, other than STP, of getting our monsters into our discard zone. And it can do it pretty quickly. However, it does create a net negative in hand advantage, but it is really good at getting us to that 7 monster Shadow Core requirement. And for our last spell, we've got 1 copy of Shadow Vortex. I'm just trying this out, but I feel like an arrows could work in this spot as well. On to the flash cards. Firstly, probably our most important flash card, we've got 2 copies of Summon Scroll. And what this card essentially does is it allows you to play any monster from your deck for a fee of 1 additional energy, in addition to that monster's cost. And this card is pretty amazing. It's kind of like a more versatile copy of Mystic Shepherd, because Mystic Shepherd running 3 was kind of awkward because After you play your first copy, the other 2 copies don't do much, but with this card, you can find your Mystic Shepherd just to fill your board with monsters, and then afterwards, you can use it to fetch anything else, like a Crystal Shade, STP, or even your Shadow Core Dragon, if you have 4 energy. Next, 2 copies of Scrollburn. And as good of a card as Scrollburn already is, it's even better in this deck, since its discard cost is pretty much a benefit to us, as we can kind of pitch any monster that we want in there, such as an STP or a Return Spirit, or we could even just pitch any monster to get us to that Shadow Core limit. And oh yeah, it does also nullify an opponent's card. And lastly, 1 copy of Spell Shatter. I wanted to play more of this, but I feel like there's not as much room in this deck for this, because you do need to run a lot of enablers to fill your discard zone as quickly as possible. But this is a good card. Notably, it stops quick energy, and it's more versatile than that. It can stop any spell card if you have the energy. Alright, so that's my Shadow Core deck profile. Thanks as always for watching. Big thanks to everyone subscribed for helping me out, and I'll see you next time.